unlimited drama series.
The baby monitor crackled to life at 11:47 p.m., and I heard my wife's fake laugh drifting through the static. That wasn't her real laugh, the one I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. This was her boardroom laugh, the one she used when she wanted something. I was hunched over my laptop in the basement, troubleshooting the home network for the third time this week. Hannah had been complaining about slow internet, claiming it was affecting her important work calls. Now I knew why she needed such reliable connectivity. "Eddie's clueless," came Hannah's voice through the monitor, crystal clear. "He actually thinks I'm working late." A man's voice responded, familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. "Good thing he's so trusting, makes this easier." My fingers froze over the keyboard. The baby monitor was left over from when Sophie was little. Hannah must have forgotten it was still plugged in upstairs. "He's snipped, so it doesn't even count," Hannah continued, and I heard the unmistakable sound of a belt buckle hitting the floor. The voice laughed, and suddenly I recognized it. Mark Thompson, my oldest friend since high school, the guy who'd been my best man, the one who'd helped me move into this house. I closed the laptop and crept upstairs, each step deliberate and silent. The hardwood creaked once and I froze, but the sounds from our bedroom continued. My bedroom. Our bedroom. Whatever. The door was cracked open. Through the gap, I could see Hannah's business suit crumpled on the floor next to Mark's jacket, the same leather jacket I'd helped him pick out for his divorce celebration last year. "Relax," Hannah was saying. "He's probably down there, fixing something. He loves playing with his little computers." That stung more than it should have. I'd built a decent IT consulting business from nothing, but Hannah always made it sound like I was just some guy who turned things off and on again. I pushed the door open wider. Hannah was sitting on the edge of our bed in her bra and skirt. Mark was shirtless, standing between her legs with his hands on her waist. They both turned toward me with expressions that weren't quite shock, more like mild inconvenience. "Oh," Hannah said, not even bothering to cover herself. "You're done already?" Mark had the audacity to grin. "Hey, Eddie, didn't hear you come up." I stood there for a moment, taking in the scene. Hannah's lipstick was smeared. Mark's wedding ring was gone, had been for months, I realized, and my favorite reading chair had Mark's shirt draped over it like he owned the place. "Don't be dramatic, Ed," Mark said, reaching for his shirt. "It's not like it means anything." Hannah nodded, actually nodding like this made perfect sense. "He's snipped, Eddie. It's just physical. You should be thanking me for getting it out of my system." The casual cruelty of it hit me like a slap. Not just the cheating, but the assumption that I'd be grateful for the explanation, that I'd just accept it and move on because Mark couldn't get anyone pregnant. I turned and walked out without saying a word. Behind me, I heard Hannah sigh. "God, he's such a child." I grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, I heard Mark's voice from upstairs. "Don't be a drama queen, Ed. We're all adults here." I got in my car and drove. The pit stop was exactly what it sounded like. A dive bar on the outskirts of town where the beer was cheap and the lighting was dim enough to hide everyone's mistakes. I'd been coming here since college, back when Mark and I would shoot pool and complain about our jobs. Now I sat alone at the bar, nursing my third beer and trying to process what I'd seen. The bartender, a guy named Rick, who'd been working here longer than anyone could remember, kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to start crying or throw something. "Rough night?" he finally asked. "You could say that." My phone buzzed. A text from Hannah. "We need to talk when you get home. Don't make this bigger than it is." I turned the phone face down and ordered another beer. That's when I noticed Mrs. Kravitz from next door, sitting in a corner booth, trying very hard to look like she wasn't watching me. She was nursing a single glass of wine, and probably had been for the past hour. The woman was nosier than a bloodhound. But right now I was grateful for any distraction. I walked over to her table. "Evening, Mrs. K. Didn't expect to see you here." She looked up with wide, innocent eyes that fooled absolutely nobody. "Oh, Eddie, what a surprise. I was just having a quiet drink after my book club." "Book club ends at 9. It's past midnight." Her cheeks flushed. "Well, sometimes we run late when we're discussing literature." I sat down across from her. "What did you see?" "See? I don't know what you mean." "Mrs. Kravitz, Your living room window faces our driveway. Mark's car has been in my spot every Tuesday and Thursday for the past month. What did you see? She fidgeted with her wine glass. Eddie, I don't like to get involved in people's personal business. Tonight's different, she sighed. That man's been coming and going like he lives there. Always when you're at work. And Hannah, well, she's been dressing awfully nice for someone who's supposedly working from home. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How long? 2 months, maybe 3? I wasn't sure if you knew, so I minded my own business. But when I saw you leave tonight looking like that, she gestured vaguely at my face. Like what? Like someone had just told you your dog died. I thanked Mrs. Kravitz and went home. The house was dark, Mark's car was gone, and Hannah was presumably asleep. I went to my home office and started documenting everything I could remember. Times, dates, conversations. Then I accessed our phone records online and started cross-referencing. The pattern was obvious once I looked for it. Calls and texts between Hannah and Mark going back 4 months. Always during my work hours. Always when Sophie was at school or with friends. I copied everything to an encrypted drive and hid it in my desk drawer. The next morning, Hannah acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee and toast, kissed my cheek, and asked about my day like we were still living in some normal marriage. We should talk, I said. About what? About last night. She sighed and sat down across from me. Eddie, you're making this into something it's not. Mark and I have history, you know that. Sometimes people need to scratch an itch. History? We dated in high school, remember? Before you and I got together. It's just nostalgia. The casual way she said it made my skin crawl. Like our 15-year marriage was just an inconvenient obstacle to her high school reunion fantasy. So this is my fault for interrupting? Don't be ridiculous. But yes, walking in like that was pretty immature. We're adults, Eddie. We can handle complicated situations without drama. I stared at her. Complicated situations. Exactly. Mark's been going through a rough time since his divorce. I'm helping him work through some things. It doesn't have anything to do with us. It has everything to do with us, Hannah. You're my wife. She rolled her eyes. God, you sound like my father. It's 2023, Eddie. People have needs. Mark can't even get anyone pregnant, so it's not like there are consequences. That phrase again. Like Mark's vasectomy was some kind of hall pass for adultery. What about Sophie? Sophie doesn't need to know anything. This is between adults. I finished my coffee and went to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Every time I tried to focus on code or client calls, I kept hearing Hannah's voice. It doesn't have anything to do with us. That afternoon, I drove to Big Dan's boxing gym on the south side of town. I'd been going there sporadically for the past few years, mostly to stay in shape and blow off steam from work stress. Dan Kowalski was a former Golden Gloves boxer who'd opened the gym after a back injury ended his competitive career. He was also one of the few people I knew who'd give me straight advice without sugarcoating it. I found him in the back office, going over receipts with a calculator older than my marriage. Eddie, he looked up with a grin. Didn't expect to see you today. You look like hell. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Sit down. What's eating you? I told him everything. The baby monitor, the bedroom, Hannah's casual dismissal, Mark's smug grin. Dan listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small grunting sounds. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. So, what do you want to do about it? I don't know. Divorce. Get a lawyer. That's one option. Expensive, messy, takes forever. You'll probably lose the house, pay alimony, and Mark will be sleeping in your bed before the papers are signed. What's the alternative? Dan smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. You get creative. Hit them where it hurts. Make them pay a price that actually matters. I'm not going to hurt anyone, Dan. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about consequences. Right now, your wife thinks she can cheat on you without any real downside. Mark thinks he can screw his best friend's wife and still be welcome at your barbecues. They're comfortable because they think you're weak. Maybe I am weak. Bullshit. You built a business from nothing. You raised a good kid. You've been loyal to people who don't deserve it. That's not weakness. That's just misplaced priorities. He stood up and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. Here's what you're going to do, he said, pouring 2 shots. You're going to stop being the nice guy. You're going to make them understand that actions have consequences. And you're going to do it smart, so they can't blame you for anything illegal or crazy. How? Start small. Gather information. Document everything. Then, you start applying pressure in ways they don't expect. Make them paranoid. Make them turn on each other. And when they're at their weakest, you hit them with everything you've got. We drank the bourbon, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, something colder and more focused. What's the first step, I asked. Go home. Act normal. Let them think they got away with it. Meanwhile, you start building your case. I drove home with a plan forming in my head. Hannah and Mark thought they were so clever, sneaking around behind my back. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. That night at dinner, Hannah was unusually chatty, talking about her day at work and asking Sophie about school, playing the perfect wife and mother while planning her next rendezvous with my best friend. How was your day, honey? She asked me, and I almost laughed at the performance. Fine, just the usual client stuff. Good. Oh, I might have to work late again Thursday. Big presentation on Friday. Thursday. The same day Mrs. Kravitz had mentioned seeing Mark's car. No problem, I said. I'll pick up Sophie from soccer practice. Hannah smiled and squeezed my hand across the table. You're the best. After dinner, I helped Sophie with her homework while Hannah took a long bath. Around 10, Hannah's phone buzzed with a text message. She was in the living room watching TV, and her phone was charging on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. Mark, can't wait for Thursday. Been thinking about you all day. I memorized the message and went back to my laptop. Time to start gathering evidence. By Thursday, I had installed a small security camera in the living room, positioned to capture anyone coming or going from the front door. I'd also cloned Hannah's phone to my laptop, so I could monitor her texts and calls in real time. None of it was admissible in court, but I wasn't planning on going to court. I left for work at my usual time, then doubled back and parked 3 blocks away. At 10:30 a.m., Mark's silver BMW pulled into my driveway. He sat in the car for a moment, checking his hair in the mirror, then walked to my front door like he owned the place. Hannah answered in a silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas. They didn't even have the decency to go upstairs immediately. Through the security camera feed on my phone, I watched them make out on my couch like teenagers. Mark's hands were all over her, and Hannah was making sounds I hadn't heard in years. I took screenshots of everything. Around noon, I drove to the pit stop for lunch. The place was nearly empty except for a few regulars and Rick behind the bar. I ordered a burger and struck up a conversation with Tommy Breslin, a guy who worked construction and knew everyone in town. Hey, Tommy, you know Mark Thompson? Used to work at the insurance company? Yeah, I know Mark. Why? Just wondering how he's doing since his divorce. Heard he's having money problems. Tommy raised an eyebrow. Money problems? Guy just bought a new BMW and moved into that fancy apartment complex on Riverside. If he's broke, he's hiding it well. I filed that information away. Mark was spending money like he had plenty of it, but his divorce settlement had supposedly left him struggling. Either he was lying to Hannah about his finances, or he was lying to everyone else. Huh, I said. Maybe I heard wrong. Someone mentioned he was asking around for loans. Not from anyone I know, but hey, maybe he's just good at keeping up appearances. That afternoon, I went back to work and acted normal. Around 5, I picked up Sophie from soccer practice as promised. Dad, is everything okay with you and Mom? Sophie asked as we drove home. What do you mean? You guys have been weird lately, like polite, but not really talking. Sophie was 17 and smarter than either Hannah or I gave her credit for. She'd probably noticed the tension even if she didn't know the cause. "We're just working through some stuff," I said. "Nothing you need to worry about." "Is it about money? Because I heard Mom on the phone talking about expenses and budgets." That was interesting. Hannah made good money in her HR director position, and my business was doing well. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. What expenses was she worried about? Did she say anything else? Just something about keeping things separate for now. I figured it was about taxes or something boring like that. Separate accounts. Hannah was hiding money, probably to fund her affair or prepare for a divorce.
I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing.
Drunk? I have everything on video.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
I made a mental note to check our bank statements more carefully. When we got home, Hannah was in the kitchen making dinner. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, playing the domestic goddess role again. "How was work?" she asked, kissing my cheek. "Busy." "How was your day?" "Oh, meetings, emails, the usual corporate nonsense." I nodded and went to wash my hands, fighting the urge to ask if Mark had enjoyed the couch. Instead, I helped set the table and made small talk about Sophie's soccer season. After dinner, I retreated to my office and reviewed the day's surveillance footage. Mark had left around 2 p.m., looking satisfied and relaxed. He'd even had the nerve to wave at Mrs. Kravitz, who was obviously watching from her window. I started researching Mark's new apartment complex. The rent for a 2-bedroom unit was $2,800 a month. Not exactly struggling divorced guy money. I also looked up his BMW. It was a 2023 model, probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Either Mark was lying about his financial situation, or he had income I didn't know about. Friday morning, Hannah left early for her big presentation. I waited until Sophie left for school, then called in sick to work and drove to Hannah's office building. I parked across the street and waited. At 11 a.m., Hannah emerged from the building with Mark and another woman I recognize as Paula Chen, Hannah's best friend and a fellow HR director. They got into Mark's BMW and drove to an upscale restaurant downtown. I followed at a distance and watched them through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. It looked like a business lunch, but the body language was all wrong. Mark had his hand on Hannah's back. Paula kept looking around nervously, and Hannah was leaning into Mark like they were planning something. After an hour, they returned to the office building. Mark kissed Hannah goodbye in the parking garage. A long, intimate kiss that made my stomach turn. Then he drove off while Hannah and Paula went back inside. I sat in my car for another hour, trying to process what I'd seen. This wasn't just an affair. It was organized, planned, involving Hannah's work friend. They were treating it like a project, complete with strategy meetings and logistics. That night, Hannah came home with flowers and wine. "I thought we could have a nice dinner," she said, arranging the flowers in a vase. "Just the two of us. Sophie's sleeping over at Jessica's." "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to want to spend time with my husband?" She made my favorite meal, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, and opened a bottle of expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Throughout dinner, she was attentive and flirty, asking about my work and laughing at my jokes. It was a performance, and we both knew it. After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie. We sat on the same couch where she'd been with Mark the day before, and Hannah curled up against me like nothing had changed. "Eddie," she said during a commercial break, "I know things have been a little tense lately. I want you to know that I love you. I love our life together." "Do you?" "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" I looked at her, really looked at her. She was still beautiful at 39, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But something fundamental had changed in her face. There was a hardness around her eyes, a calculation in her expressions that hadn't been there before. "No reason," I said. "I love you too." She smiled and kissed me, and for a moment I almost believed her, almost forgot about the surveillance footage and the restaurant meeting and Mark's hands on her body. But then she pulled away and checked her phone, and the spell was broken. "Sorry," she said, typing a quick response to someone. "Work emergency." The text was to Mark. He's not suspicious. Everything's going according to plan. I pretended to watch the movie while my mind raced. According to plan. This wasn't just an affair. It was a scheme. But a scheme to do what? Over the next 2 weeks, I became a different person. Not the Eddie Grant who fixed computers and coached Little League and tried to see the best in everyone. This Eddie was methodical, patient, and ruthless. I documented everything. Every text message, every phone call, every meeting between Hannah and Mark. I tracked their spending, their schedules, their lies. I installed tracking software on Hannah's laptop and discovered she'd been researching divorce lawyers and asset protection strategies. She was planning to leave me, but she wanted to do it on her terms. The affair with Mark wasn't just about sex or emotion. It was about having a soft landing when she blew up our marriage. The more I learned, the angrier I became. Not the hot, explosive anger I'd expected, but something cold and focused. They thought I was stupid. They thought I'd just roll over and accept whatever they decided to do to me. They were wrong. My first move was subtle. I started a rumor at the pit stop that Mark was having financial problems despite his expensive lifestyle. I mentioned to Tommy Breslin that I'd heard Mark was borrowing money from married women, playing the sympathy card about his divorce. Within a week, the story had spread through half the town. Mark's reputation as a smooth operator was taking hits from people who barely knew him. Next, I targeted Hannah's work situation. I knew she was using company resources for personal business, meeting Mark during work hours, using the office printer for personal documents, making personal calls on company time. I started documenting these violations and preparing a detailed report for her boss. But my masterpiece was the high school reunion. Our 25th reunion was scheduled for the last Saturday in October. Hannah had been on the planning committee for months, excited about seeing old friends and showing off her successful career. She'd bought an expensive dress and made appointments for hair and makeup. She was planning to bring Mark as her date. I knew this because I'd seen their text messages planning the whole thing. Hannah would tell people that we were taking a break and that Mark was helping her through a difficult time. They'd make their relationship public in front of everyone we'd known since we were teenagers. I had other plans. The reunion was held at the Riverside Country Club, the same place where Hannah and I had our wedding reception 15 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. I arrived alone, wearing my best suit and a confident smile. Hannah and Mark were already there, working the room like a political couple. Hannah looked stunning in her black cocktail dress, and Mark was playing the supportive boyfriend role perfectly. I spent the first hour mingling, catching up with old friends, and positioning myself for what came next. I made sure to talk to everyone who mattered, the popular kids, the athletes, the class officers. I was charming and funny, the Eddie Grant they remembered from high school. Around 9 o'clock, the reunion committee made their traditional presentation, a slideshow of photos from our senior year, followed by updates on classmates who couldn't attend. Hannah, as a committee member, was one of the presenters. I waited until she was at the microphone, addressing the crowd of 200 people before I made my move. "Hannah," I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Before you continue, I have something I'd like to share with everyone." The room fell silent. Hannah's face went pale, but she maintained her composure. "Eddie, this isn't really the time. Actually, it's the perfect time. Everyone's here, including our old friends Mark and Paula. It's like a family reunion." I walked to the front of the room, pulling out my phone. Behind me, the projection screen still showed photos of our 18-year-old selves, young and innocent and full of dreams. See, I've been doing some research lately, learning things about the people closest to me, things that might surprise some of you. Mark started moving toward me, but I held up my hand. For instance, did you know that my wife Hannah and my oldest friend Mark have been having an affair for the past 4 months? They've been meeting at my house, using company time for personal meetings, and planning to make their relationship public tonight. The room exploded in whispers and gasps. Hannah grabbed the microphone. "Eddie, you're drunk. You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I? Let me show everyone some photos that might clarify things." I connected my phone to the projection system and started displaying screenshots of text messages between Hannah and Mark. Not the explicit ones. I wasn't trying to traumatize anyone, but the ones that clearly showed the planning and deception. Hannah, 2:30 p.m. last Tuesday. Eddie's working late. Come over after 3. Mark, 2:32 p.m. Can't wait, been thinking about you all morning. More gasps from the crowd. I could see people pulling out their phones, recording everything. Hannah, Thursday morning. He's not suspicious. Everything's going according to plan. Mark, Thursday afternoon. After the reunion, we can stop hiding. Hannah tried to grab the microphone from me, but I stepped away. But here's the really interesting part. This isn't just about an affair. Hannah's been planning to divorce me for months, hiding assets, researching lawyers. The affair with Mark isn't about love. It's about having financial security when she destroys our marriage. I clicked to the next slide, showing bank statements and legal documents I'd found on Hannah's laptop. She's been moving money into separate accounts, preparing to claim that my business income is unstable, and planning to take our house in custody of our daughter. Mark's been helping her strategize, and in return, she's been helping him maintain his lifestyle while he hides assets from his own divorce settlement. The room was dead silent now. Hannah's face was red with humiliation and rage. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. But the best part, I continued, is that none of this was necessary. If Hannah had just asked for a divorce, I would have given her one. We could have split everything fairly and moved on with our lives. Instead, she chose to lie, cheat, and scheme, thinking I was too stupid to figure it out. I turned to face Hannah directly. The joke's on you, sweetheart. I've already filed for divorce. I've already moved our joint assets into protected accounts. I've already given your boss a detailed report on your misuse of company resources. And I've already sent copies of all your communications to Mark's ex-wife's lawyer, since you two have been hiding income that should have been part of their divorce settlement. Hannah's composure finally cracked. You bastard! You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. Mark was my friend. You both betrayed that, and now you're facing the consequences. I looked out at the crowd of our former classmates, many of whom were recording everything on their phones. I wanted everyone to know the truth before you started spreading your version of events. Hannah's going to tell people that I was a bad husband, that I drove her away, that she deserves sympathy and support. But the truth is simpler. She's a cheater and a liar who got caught. I disconnected my phone and headed for the exit. Behind me, the room erupted in chaos. Hannah was crying. Mark was trying to explain himself to anyone who would listen, and 200 people were processing the most dramatic moment in reunion history. As I reached the door, I turned back one more time. Oh, and Hannah, that expensive dress you're wearing. I bought it. The jewelry, wedding gifts from me. Even the car you drove here tonight is registered in my name. You might want to figure out how you're getting home. I walked out into the cool October night, feeling lighter than I had in months. The aftermath of the reunion was swift and devastating. By Sunday morning, videos of my presentation were circulating on social media. By Monday, Hannah's boss had called her in for a disciplinary meeting. By Tuesday, Mark's ex-wife had filed a motion to reopen their divorce settlement. Hannah moved out of our house on Wednesday, taking only her clothes and personal items. She couldn't touch any of our joint assets because I'd already transferred them into accounts she couldn't access. She couldn't claim spousal support because I had documented evidence of her adultery and financial deception. She couldn't even afford a good lawyer because her credit cards were maxed out and her bank accounts were nearly empty. Mark's situation was even worse. His ex-wife's lawyer had discovered that he'd been hiding income and assets during their divorce. The BMW was repossessed when it turned out he'd been leasing it under false financial statements. His fancy apartment evicted him for non-payment of rent. Apparently, he'd been using credit cards to pay his bills while hiding his real income. Within 2 weeks, both of them were living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. But I wasn't done yet. See, during my investigation, I'd discovered something interesting about Paula Chen, Hannah's best friend and co-conspirator. She'd been feeding Hannah information about divorce strategies and asset protection, helping her plan the whole scheme. But Paula had her own secrets. She'd been embezzling money from their company's employee benefit fund, skimming small amounts from retirement contributions and health insurance premiums. It was sophisticated and well hidden, but I'd found traces of it in the financial documents on Hannah's laptop. Paula had been planning to disappear with the stolen money once Hannah's divorce was finalized. She'd already opened offshore accounts and purchased a plane ticket to Costa Rica under a false name. I turned all of this evidence over to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. On Friday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the reunion, federal agents raided the offices of Hannah's company. They arrested Paula at her desk and seized all of her financial records. The investigation revealed that she'd stolen over $400,000 from employee benefits over the past 2 years. Hannah, as Paula's supervisor and close friend, was also investigated. While they couldn't prove she was directly involved in the embezzlement, her own misuse of company resources and her association with Paula made her unemployable in the HR field. Bye.